You're standing in the ward corridor, leaning your back against the cold tile wall, and you can smell chlorine and urine coming off the wet mop. The floor is sticky, smelling of sweat, medicine, and old dust, with a whiff of cigarette smoke drifting in from somewhere. One of the patients was smoking in the bathroom again. You're wearing a simple cotton pajama in a faded green color, cheap sneakers, disposable gloves that are tearing at the fingertips, and a cloth mask growing damp from your own breath. The shift has just started, and you're already exhausted. The ward is noisy. Someone is laughing in a voice that isn't their own, someone is screaming curses, someone is moaning monotonously. At the far end, the heavy metal door of the observation room slams shut. Behind the nurse's station, a nurse jots something in the log without even glancing up at you. You're here as the eyes and hands for those who write the orders. You're holding a set of keys, heavy, cold metal that jingles and reminds you this isn't a hospital, it's a small prison with white walls. You walk into a room. There's a puddle on the floor, the sharp smell of feces and sour sweat hits your nose. A middle-aged patient in a stretched-out hospital gown sits on the bed, rocking back and forth, mumbling something incoherent, pants pushed down to his ankles. Silently you pull a second pair of gloves over the first, grab a rag and a bucket of murky water, and start wiping the floor, feeling the warm, dirty moisture seep through the microtears in the gloves onto your skin. Sweat runs down your back even though the ward is cool. You move fast, racing the clock. In your head, the routine spins mechanically, cleaning, changing linens, taking out trash, monitoring, escorting, the list of duties you've memorized, and which weighs on you more heavily than the smell of chlorine. The patient suddenly jerks, grabs your sleeve, and whispers, "They're coming for me tonight." You gently pull free without looking him in the eye and keep wiping. You've learned not to look any of them in the face for long. Your gaze catches on details instead. Dirty fingernails, needle marks, bruises from restraints, a torn sheet tied to the headboard. You know who's prone to running away, who's prone to fights, who's prone to self-harm. It's your unspoken map of the ward, drawn over dozens of shifts. You remember how you ended up here. Ordinary high school education, a random opening for an orderly, the promise of a steady paycheck and meaningful work. They told you you'd just be cleaning and helping out. Nothing complicated. Not a word about having to hold down people who want to smash your head against a wall. The first shift was fear. The second was numbness. Within a month you're already closing the heavy door behind you on autopilot, no longer flinching at screams. A nurse calls from the station. You step into the corridor, where the light hits your eyes in a cold fluorescent rectangle, and head to the observation room. Inside, restraint straps, bare walls, a ceiling camera, beds with no sharp edges. A young guy is inside, thin, eyes wide. He paces in circles, muttering, throwing quick, suspicious glances at you. The nurse hisses, "Watch him, looks like he's about to lose it." You go in, feeling tension in the air like before a fight. The door clicks shut behind you. It's just the two of you in the room now. The light presses down from above. The walls feel like they're closing in. The air is thick with sweat and medicine. The guy walks up to you, almost face to face. The smell of stale breath and cigarettes hits you. He speaks quietly but fast. "You understand, they're poisoning me. I know everything. I'm not staying here." His eyes are a mix of panic and rage. You've seen it hundreds of times before. The main thing is not to turn your back on him, not to let yourself get cornered. He lunges for the door. You instinctively grab him by the shoulders. His skin is hot, sweaty. He twists, trying to break free, headbutts you in the forehead. The world jolts and swims for a second. You hold your grip, feeling the strap chafe your wrist, and shout for the nurse. 2 more orderlies rush in. Together you wrestle him onto the bed. He screams, spits, promises to cut all of you up one by one if he gets free. Your gloves slip on his skin. He thrashes as if electricity were running through his muscles. Curses mixed with delirium fill the room. The nurse silently prepares an injection. Your job is to hold him down. You feel his body gradually go slack. The screaming turns into a rasp. His breathing grows heavy and slow. You fasten the restraints on his wrists and ankles. The straps bite into the skin, leaving red grooves. Sweat pours down your back. Your temples pound, but there's no time to think, you're already being called from the next room. Someone refused to take their pills, someone's trying to break a window. Evening. You're mopping the corridor for the second time this shift. The mop scrapes across the linoleum. The bucket water is murky and gray, your hands are numb. Patients wander around you. One asks for a cigarette, another asks, "What year is it now?" A third just follows behind you, staring at the floor. The screaming no longer throws you off rhythm anymore, it's become background noise, like a neighbor's TV. You step into the common room, an old television on the wall, a table with a peeling surface, a couple of plastic chairs. Patients sit watching the news. Someone laughs quietly for no reason, someone talks to themselves. You scan the room with your eyes, that one's calm today, this one's too quiet. Which could mean he'll withdraw into himself and try something tonight. Monitoring is your real job, even though on paper the first listed duty is cleaning. The nighttime smell of the ward is even heavier. Chlorine mixes with the night dose of pills, the smell of old mattresses and bodies that don't always get washed in time. Only the corridor's night duty lamps stay on. Under them you look like a ghost in cheap medical pajamas. Orderlies rest in shifts of 2 hours, but rest means a chair in the staff room and trying to sleep through the sound of distant screaming. You do rounds, opening doors quietly, watching the sleeping patients, catching any movement, any rustle. One patient stands at the window staring into the darkness, the moon reflected in the glass, his face like a mask. You gently call him by name, guide him back to bed, straighten his blanket, though you yourself have long forgotten how to sleep normally. At 3 a.m. you're called to the women's ward to help transfer a patient for a procedure. The elevator creaks, crawling upward. A dim lamp flickers, straining your eyes. A woman in a hospital gown with an empty stare occasionally twitches and giggles silently. You hold the gurney, feeling its weight through the cold metal, and catch yourself staring at a single point too, just to keep from thinking. Sometimes news surfaces about orderlies beating a patient somewhere, and you catch these stories out of the corner of your eye on the staff room TV. Afterward, whispers move through the corridors. Heard they're trying to prosecute those guys. We can't even raise our voices. The guidelines say, be humane, polite, and correct. But those lines say nothing about the nighttime screams, or the blows that leave your ribs aching. You live suspended between that text and a reality where you sometimes have to make a decision in a split second. Toward morning, the light stings your eyes. You sit on a stool in the staff room, holding a plastic cup of black, sweet tea that smells of cheap tea leaves and an aluminum kettle. Scattered on the table, gloves, empty ampoules, scraps of gauze. The nurse fills out paperwork while you just wait for the moment you can go home and stare at the ceiling for a couple of hours without hearing anyone else's voice. You get home during the day, when everyone else is already living their ordinary lives, work, errands, kids off to school. You collapse onto the bed still dressed. You can still feel the smell of chlorine and medicine in your nose, and your hands still remember the resistance of another person's body. Sleep comes in fits and starts. You dream that someone is calling you down a corridor, and you wake up listening hard to the silence. A few years in, your back aches constantly from lifting patients, from bending, from endless cleaning. Your knees creak on the stairs, your fingers carry a chronic ache. The skin on your hands is long since dried out from cleaning products and disinfectants, cracked and nicked. You know where every pill and every bandage is kept, but sometimes you forget what day of the week it is. The pay is modest, it goes toward utilities, food, loan payments, and the occasional small treat like a new pair of cheap sneakers. You count your shifts the way other people count vacation days, around 30 a month, roughly one 24-hour shift every 2 days, sometimes more when someone's out sick or has quit. Sometimes you think about leaving, but you realize you have no other stable work to go to. The first major turning point comes when a patient suddenly hits a nurse with a metal mug. It happens in seconds, a scream, the clang of metal, blood on a white coat. You lunge, wrestling him down together with another orderly. Only one thought pounds in your head, get there in time, don't let him finish her off. Afterward come the debriefings, the written explanations to the head physician. The camera footage shows you acted by the book, but a sticky residue remains inside you all the same. What if you hadn't made it in time? The nurse quits a couple of months later, saying she can't walk into that ward anymore without her hands shaking. You stay. The second blow, the death of one of your longtime patients. You'd known him for years, watched him go from violent to quiet, watched him stop shouting and just lie there staring at the ceiling. One morning you walk into his room and see he's not breathing. His eyes are open, his face calm. You hit the alarm, call the doctor, and the room fills with commotion. But you already know, somehow, before anyone confirms it. The body is taken to the morgue, the room's linens are changed quickly, the room aired out. A couple of days later, a new patient is put in that same bed. To the system, he was just a line in a logbook. To you, he's one more brick added to the wall inside you that separates you from ordinary emotion. You notice you laugh less and less at home, and stay silent more and more. The burnout doesn't hit all at once, it's a slow leak. You stop sleeping properly altogether. Even on days off you wake in the night and listen to the silence, as if a patient should be screaming somewhere. You become irritable, snapping at loved ones over small things. Afterward you feel crushing guilt, but you no longer have the strength to change anything. By evening, before a shift, a heaviness settles in your chest and your hands tremble slightly, but you go anyway, because you have to. At some point you notice you've started treating people as diagnoses and case histories instead of people: schizophrenia with aggression, alcoholic psychosis, depression with suicide attempts. Labels replace names in your head. It helps you function, but it slowly kills whatever used to be compassion in you. The final event happens on another night shift. A new patient, brought in by ambulance, refuses to lie down, screams, thrashes, threatens. You and a paramedic try to restrain him. In the chaos, someone films it on a phone through a half-open door from the corridor. The footage shows only several people holding down a screaming man. A couple of days later the clip surfaces online, and a short news item appears: orderlies used force against a psychiatric patient. An inquiry begins. A commission arrives. You're called into an office and asked, why were you holding him like that? Why didn't you wait for the police? Why did you raise your voice? To them, these are dry checklist items. In your head, flashes of memory. The man trying to rip glass out of the window frame. Following the inquiry, you're let go by mutual agreement, to avoid drawing attention, officially, for violating ethical and professional conduct standards. Unofficially, you simply became a convenient scapegoat to calm down journalists and higher-ups. You walk out of the hospital for the last time with a bag of personal belongings, and here, behind you, the heavy metal door swings shut. What the job leaves you with: a body with a ruined back and worn-out hands, chronic fatigue, broken sleep. Voices in your head, screams, laughter, fragments of patients' phrases that surface for no reason. A reputation as the one who got fired from the psych ward. Finding new work becomes hard. At interviews they ask why you left, and you learn to lie. Over the years you worked hundreds of 12 to 24-hour shifts, spent thousands of hours in corridors and rooms, witnessed dozens of deaths, dozens of violent episodes, hundreds of moments of humiliation and helplessness. The money you earned was barely enough to stay afloat. Sometimes you picked up shifts at other hospitals or covered for others just to pay off debts. A therapist was never something you could afford. What did you gain? A stable but low income. The ability not to panic at the sight of blood and screaming. A knack for seeing illness and danger behind people's behavior. What did you lose? Sleep, trust in the system, part of your compassion for people, your health, and years of your life dissolved in chlorine and night rounds. You wanted simple, stable work that didn't require a college degree. Stability turned out to be a chain of shifts that devoured your youth, your health, and the quiet in your mind. If you ever find yourself in a corridor like that, as a patient or a relative, remember, behind those white doors live neither heroes nor monsters, just people trying to survive inside a system that grinds everyone down the same way. And ask yourself what your own freedom is worth, while you can still choose where to work and what price you're willing to pay for stability.